Hallelujah, 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 amen. Hine, ma tovu manayim, sheverachim gam yachad. Hine, ma tovu manayim, sheverachim gam yachad. Hallelujah, 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 amen. Hallelujah, 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 amen. Hine, ma tovu manayim, sheverachim gam yachad. Hine, ma tovu manayim, sheverachim gam yachad. Sheverachim gam yachad. Sheverachim gam yachad.
Thank you, Josh, and Shabbat Shalom. Welcome to everybody on Zoom, on Facebook, and TOS Live, and on Brookline Public Access TV. I'm Rabbi Daniel Schaefer, joined by our music educator, Josh Cohn, for this Shabbat of Passover. And I was reflecting this afternoon as I began to clean up my house from the mess that it has become, that many of us, as we got ready for Passover, went through a meticulous process of cleansing our homes, of spiritually cleansing ourselves. We may have participated in bidikat hametz, in the search for hametz in our home, searching for every little crumb, wherever it might be hidden, in the cushions of our couch, in our car seats, wherever crumbs may find themselves in your home. And then, for some reason, we have a holiday where for 8 days we eat very brittle crackers that leave crumbs everywhere. And so for me, I felt like I worked so hard to try and get to this place where I can experience freedom, where I can experience redemption. And almost immediately, there's a sense of messiness that follows. And I think that's just life. We work really hard. Hopefully we reach these spiritual high points, and then we have to come back down and live our life in this world. And so whether your life has been clean and perfect all week, or whether your life has been a little bit messy, you're welcome here. I'm glad that we're going to have a chance to sing together, to pray together, to welcome in Shabbat together. So if you have some candles and you'd like to light with me, we are on page 2 in our prayer books, and I'll invite everybody to light as Josh leads us in the candle blessing and leads us into Shalom Aleichem as we welcome in the Shabbat angels.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lechad ligner shel Shabbat. Shalom Alechem, Malachi Hasharet, Malachi Malachi Amlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Moachim Shalom, Malachi HaShalom, Malachi Elyon. Shalom, Malachi HaShalom, Malachi Elyon, Melech, Malachi Amlachim HaKadosh, Baruch Hu, Seichem, Seichem Shalom, Malachi HaShalom, Malachi Elyon, Melech, Malachi Amlachim HaKadosh, Baruch Hu.
I'd like to say that it's always an appropriate time to say a psalm. We say psalms in moments of happiness and in moments of sadness. We say them in the morning and we say them at night. Tomorrow we'll have an opportunity to sing a special selection of psalms as we sing Hallel as a part of the Passover festival. But every Shabbat we help to welcome in the Shabbat bride by singing a selection of psalms. And tonight we're going to sing a few lines from Psalm 99, which can be found at the bottom of page 17. And this melody was written by Josh, and it's a chance for us to lift up God's name and to imagine ourselves on God's holy mountain.
Romemu, 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 Adonai Eloheinu, Ve'ishtachavu, Ve'ishtachavu, Le'har Kodsho. Romemu, Romemu, Adonai Eloheinu, Ve'ishtachavu, Ve'ishtachavu, Le'har Ki kadosh, ki kadosh, ki kadosh, oh, ki kadosh, Adonai Eloheinu, yeah, join me, ki kadosh, sing it out, ki kadosh, ki kadosh, Adonai Eloheinu, Romemu, Romemu, Adonai Eloheinu, Ve'ishtachavu, Ve'ishtachavu, Le'har Kodsho.
As we turn to the Chadodi on page 20, we're going to talk a little bit later this evening about the Kabbalists who wrote the Chadodi and who helped create and popularize the Kabbalat Shabbat service. They had a tremendous impact on the entire Jewish world that continues hundreds of years later. And they didn't necessarily invent the Jewish mystical concepts that we're going to discuss in a little bit. But they gave them new form, and they gave them a container so that people could access them and connect with them in new ways. They brought them into the Jewish mainstream in a way that had never been done before. And I try to imagine what it was like, to have such a lasting impact. And I think about the founders of this country and the ideas that they brought and that they preserved in our founding documents that continue to resonate, those principles that they outlined for us, that we are all created equal, that every person has the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. They may have been written hundreds of years ago, but they continue to shape and animate our lives to today. And I think Lecha Dodi is one of the fullest expressions of that philosophy and that outlook. And so we have the privilege of singing it tonight, and we'll sing together verses 1, 2, 5, and 9. And I invite you to rise when we reach that last stanza as we turn to greet the Shabbat bride.
נקבלה, לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. Repeat after me. לך, לך דודי, דודי, together. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. Verse 1. שמור וזכור לדיבור אחד, השמיענו אל המיוחד, אדוני אחד ושמו אחד, לשם ולתפארת ולתהילה. לך דודי דודי, לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. Verse 2. לקראת שבת לכו ונלכה, כי מקור הברכה, מראש מקדם נסוכה, סוף מעשה במחשבה תחילה. לך דודי, לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. Verse 5. התעוררי, התעוררי, כי באורך ומאורי, אורי, אורי, שיר תעברי, כבוד אדוני עלייך נגלה. לך דודי דודי, לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. בואי בשלום עטרת בעלה, גם בשמחה ובזאת עולה, תוך אמוני ים סגולה. בואי כלה, בואי כלה. לך דודי דודי, לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה.
We turn to page 22 for Psalm 92. We're going to sing together our Psalm for Shabbat, a song of wonder. And if anybody has something they'd like to share, a moment of wonder from this week, I invite you to raise your hand or to mention it in the chat. And after we sing the song together, I'll invite anybody to share who'd like to share, or I'm happy to read aloud any reflections on wonder and awe from this week.
Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Magadu, Masechaya. sing any part you like. Magadu, Masechaya, Me'olam kumachvutecha. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah.
Thank you, Josh. And thank you to everybody who shared in the chat. Larry said TOS Chopped, which was our competition last night for Passover cooking competition. It was definitely a lot of fun, and congratulations to our contestants and our participants. And Heather shared that Austin said Mama and Dada with meaning. That is incredible. That is definitely a moment of awe and wonder, and began drinking from a cup on his own. That's very exciting. We bundle up those moments of awe and wonder that we experience on our own and that we experience as a community, and we bring them into our evening service as we turn to Chatzi Kaddish on page 26. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah b'alma divra chirutei b'amlich malchutei b'chayechon uvyomechon u'chayedecho Beit Yisrael Bagala Uizman Kariv Bimeru Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabba Mevorach Le'alam Ulamei Almaya Yitbarach V'yishtabach V'yitpa'ar V'yitromam V'yitnaseh V'yitadar V'yitaleh V'yitalal Shmei Dekudsha Berechu Le'ela Min Kol Birchata V'shirata Tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiran b'yalma v'meru. Amen. I invite you to unmute yourself in a moment as we rise for the Baruch Hu, which can be found on page 28. And if you're comfortable, to respond together for the call to worship. Baruchu et Adonai HaMevorach.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam Va'ed. We're welcome to be seated, and we are going to welcome on the evening. It's not quite dark yet, but it's never too early on Shabbat and Shabbat alone to welcome on the evening. And so we're going to sing this song by Noam Katz, which helps us honor Ma'ariv Aravim, Roll into Dark.
Roll into dark, roll into light. Night becomes day, day turns night. Roll into dark, roll into light. Night becomes day, day turns night. Borei yom v'layla, rolei or mipnei choshech, rolei or mipnei choshech, v'choshech mipnei or. Roll into dark, roll into light. וחושך מבני אור, וחושך מבני אור. ברוך אתה אדוני המעריב ערבים.
We continue with Ahavat Olam on page 32.
Ahavat Olam, Beit Yisrael, Amcha Torah u'mitzvot, chukim u'mishpatim, otanu limadta, otanu limadta. Alkein Adonai Eloheinu b'shochtenu ufkumenu nasiach bechukecha v'nismach b'divrei Toratecha u'mitzvotecha le'olam va'ed. Ki hem chayenu ve'orech yameinu uvahem negeyom ham v'layla, negeyom ham v'layla. Ve'achavatcha tasir mimenu le'olamim, Baruch atah Adonai Oel amo Yisrael, Oel amo Yisrael.
We're welcome to unmute ourselves as we join together for the Shema on page 34. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Baruch Shem Kivod Malchuto
Leolam Va'ed.
We continue with V'ahavta, which can be found on page 36. And if we've unmuted ourselves, let's remute for the time being. V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha v'chol levavcha u'v'chol nafshecha u'v'chol meodecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi metzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta ba'am v'shivtecha b'veitecha uvlechtecha v'aderech uvshochbecha uvkumecha ukshartam leot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot bein einecha uchtavtam al mezuzot beitecha uvisharecha leman tiskeru v'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'hitem kedoshim lelohechem ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeiti etchem ve'eretz mitzrayim liot lachem leelohim Ani Adonai Elohechem. Adonai Elohechem Emet. So we all know that we want to stay cool and relevant. The way to do that is by finding young people in our life and asking them what they think is cool and relevant. And if you want to know what's cool and relevant in the Jewish world, I invite you to check out our Tuesday afternoon services through the Anson Religious School. Those kids will let you know what is great to sing and what is happening in the Jewish world. And there has been one song that has just gotten stuck in my head and that I cannot stop singing. And it is inspired by Micha Mocha. And we have been singing it a lot at ARS on Tuesdays. And so I beg Josh to lead us in it tonight. And Josh, I don't think it's a new song necessarily.
No, it's been around for a few years, written by Ellen Allard.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a good one.
But I hope you enjoy it as much as I do. And you feel like it brings that excitement of crossing the sea and of moving on to freedom that our ancestors experienced when they sang Micha Mocha.
Yeah, so I gotta put you all in the mindset, right? Pharaoh finally had the plagues come to him and he said, all right, Moses, take them, take the Jewish people. So they went to the sea and there we are, standing at the sea. There's a lot of motions here, so y'all gotta do this with me. We're standing at the sea, Micha Mocha, we're standing at the sea. Micha Mocha, we're standing at the sea. Micha Mocha, freedom's on our way. Hands in the air, freedom, freedom, down low. Freedom, freedom, all around. Freedom, freedom, freedom's on our way. One more time. Freedom, freedom, down low. Freedom, freedom, all around. Freedom, freedom, freedom's on our way. We're singing and dancing, Micha Mocha. We're singing and dancing, Micha Mocha. We're singing and dancing, Micha Mocha. Freedom's on our way. Everyone stop! Look over your shoulders. Go ahead, do it. Pharaoh and his army are coming up behind us, so we have to quicken our pace. They're coming up behind. Micha Mocha, they're coming up behind. Oy vey! Micha Mocha, they're coming up behind. Micha Mocha, freedom's on our way. But we will not be slaves again, so we say, bow no more. Micha Mocha, bow no more. Micha Mocha, bow no more. Micha Mocha, freedom's on our way. Hands in the air, freedom, freedom, down low. Freedom, freedom, all around. Freedom, freedom, freedom's on our way. Moses takes the staff and puts it in the water. Nachshon goes in. Please choose the drosh that's best for you. The sea sheep parts, Micha Mocha. The sea sheep parts, Micha Mocha. The sea sheep parts, Micha Mocha. Freedom's on our way. Now the sea parted, it's a little bit yucky. It's not nicely paved like good old Beacon Street, friends. It's muddy, it's slushy. We're basically wearing sandals back there, so our feet are sticking. Oy vey. We're walking through the water. Micha Mocha. We're walking through the water. Here we go. Micha Mocha. We're walking through the water. Micha Mocha. Freedom's on our way. Hands in the air. Freedom, freedom, down low. Freedom, freedom, all around. Freedom, freedom, freedom's on our way. Let's give some Zoom air high fives because we made it. Woohoo! We're on the other side. Micha Mocha, we're on the other side. Micha Mocha, we're on the other side. All right. Micha Mocha, freedom's on our way. Let me see the number one. One God, Micha Mocha. One God, Micha Mocha. One God, Micha Mocha. Freedom's on our way. We're singing and dancing. We're singing and dancing, Micha Mocha. We're singing and dancing, Micha Mocha. We're singing and dancing, Micha Mocha. Freedom's on our way. Hands in the air. Freedom, freedom, down low. Freedom, freedom, all around. Freedom, freedom. invited to Eres Tefillah anytime. Y'all are fabulous.
For Jerusalem. Hashkivenu is on page 42.
Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom ve'hamidenu shomrei nu lechaim. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom ve'hamidenu shomrei nu lechaim u'shmor tzedkeinu
Turn now to the Amidah, which begins on page 46. And on Passover, we enact a change in the second blessing of the Amidah and the Gevurot blessing. We go from praying for wind and rain to praying for dew. And my blessing for us is that this prayer is a prayer for softness and ease in our lives. Whatever felt harsh over the last 4 or 5 months, that we feel a sense of ease coming on and over the summer, and we all get to experience that together. We'll rise in body or spirit for the first 3 blessings and then have a chance to continue with our own private prayers this evening. Adonai sifatai tiftach ufi yagid tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Ve'Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Ve'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Ve'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanorah, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, Mekonei Hakol, V'Zocher Chastei Avot v'Imahot, Umevi Gula Livnei B'neihem, Leman Shemo B'Ahava, Melech Ozer Moshia Umagen, Baruch Atah Adonai, Magen Abraham, Ve'ezrat Sarah, Atah Gibor Leolam Adonai, Mechaye Hakol Atah Rav Lehoshia, Morid Hatal, Mechalkel Chaim Bechesed, Mechaye Hakol Berachamim Rabim, Somech Noflim Verofei Cholim, Umatir Asurim, Umekayem Emunato, Lishenei Afar, Michamocha Baal Gevurot, Umido Melach, Melech Meimit Umechaye, Umatzmiach Yeshua, B'ne'eman Atah L'Hachayot Hakol, Baruch Atah Adonai, Mechaye Hakol. Atah Kadosh V'Shimcha Kadosh, U'Kadoshim B'chol Yom Yehallelu Chasela, Baruch Atah Adonai, Ha'el HaKadosh.
say shalom bimroma. Say shalom aleinu, page 62. Be'al kol Yisrael, be'al kol yoshvei tevel, ve'imru, amen. Oh say shalom bimroma. Say shalom aleinu, be'al kol Yisrael, be'al kol yoshvei tevel, ve'imru, amen. Yalalei, yalalei, shalom aleinu, be'al kol Yisrael, be'al kol yoshvei tevel, ve'imru, amen. Yalalei, yalalei.
We go to a prayer, from a prayer for peace to a prayer for healing. And anybody who's saying a prayer for healing tonight for a loved one, I invite you to just type their name into the chat and we will read it aloud in a moment. As a community tonight, we are praying for Ken Yenton, Akiva Hillel ben Abraham Yitzhak, Molly Mead, Moralia Bat Shoshana, Aaron Page, Sydney Jean Pizetsky, Matan Aryeh ben Harav Nisan Varachel, Allison Rim, Bernard Gray, Liesel Allen, Marcia Steve Conan, Eddie Alicia, Petra Dwarka, Jorgen Wakert, Eileen, Tyler, Miriam, and Valerie. We hold all those in need of healing in our hearts, and we turn together to page 253, and we sing together Misha Berach.
Rabbi Schaefer, I hope it's okay we sing a different melody of a prayer song tonight. Friends, in that same spirit as Misha Berach, we sing El Na that Miriam sang for Moses. El Na, Refanala, Refanala. Let's start on the right note. El Na, Refanala. High up there, Refanala. We are praying for healing, we sing it again. El Na, Refanala, Refanala. Repeat after me. Dear God of our ancestors, dear God of our ancestors, help us renew our faith. Grant us perfect healing. Bring peace to all our days. And we sing together. Hail Na, Refanala. tired spirits, rejuvenate our light. Hail na refana la, refana la nu. Hail na refana la, refana la nu. Thank you for all these blessings throughout our days and nights. We celebrate this journey, this precious gift of life. Sing it out. Hail na refana la, refana la nu. For those in need of healing, we sing. Hail na refana la, refana la nu. For all those who need healing. Hail na refana la, refana la nu. Hail na refana la, refana la nu.
We wish them all refuah shlema, a complete and speedy recovery. So tonight I want to talk about something which I don't often talk about, which is Jewish theology and my own personal theology, at least a little bit of it. And I would say if there's one thing that we all know about Jewish theology, it's that God is one. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Listen, Israel, Adonai is our God, Adonai is one. Not two, not three, not four, not five, one. The first two commandments make it clear. I am the Lord thy God. You shall have no other gods before me. Not we are the Lord thy God, or all of us are the Lord thy God. I, the singular, am the Lord thy God. And many of us may have sung recently at Passover, one of my favorite songs, Echad mi yodea, Echad ani yodea, Echad Eloheinu, 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 Sheba Shamayim Uva'aretz. Who knows one? I know one. One is our God on heaven and earth. That is it. Case closed, except we are Jews. And if you ask a Kabbalist, someone who is learned in Jewish mysticism, they will tell you that God is one and God is also 10. Not 10 gods, but 10 manifestations of God's essence, which we call Sfirot. I want to talk more about the Sfirot in a moment and how I understand them, because they are quite complex and I cannot say that I am an expert or that I fully grasp them. I just want to be able to share with you what I have grown to understand and how I'm relating to them. But first, let me explain to you why they are especially relevant at this time. As you may have seen in this morning's newsletter, we are in a period called the Omer, which is a 49-day period between Passover and Shavuot, when it is a mitzvah to say a blessing and to count each day. And if you haven't read today's newsletter and Rabbi Berkman's message and the message from Jessica, one of our members, I highly recommend going and checking out. Both of them are excellent and offer a great introduction to the Omer. Tonight, I just want to say that counting the Omer is an ancient practice. It has evolved over thousands of years, and I think it has the ability to expand our awareness, to root us in our tradition, and to connect us to the cycles of nature. And one of the things that I love about it is that even though it falls over a 7-week period on 49 individual days, it is considered one long mitzvah. And these days between Passover and Shavuot, which is the 50th day, are deeply significant for the Jewish people. Passover is our festival of liberation. Shavuot is our festival of revelation. And that journey from the redemption of slavery in Egypt to the revelation of Torah in Mount Sinai is something that we can take slowly, mindfully, by counting the Omer. I want to share my screen for the next few minutes so you can follow along with me. If you're curious, the mitzvah of counting the Omer comes from the book of Leviticus, where we are commanded to count the 7 weeks after we bring the first Omer or sheaf of barley to the temple in Jerusalem. And it says, Usfartem lachem, you shall count. And from that day on which you bring the Omer of elevation offering, the day after the Sabbath, you shall count off 7 weeks. They must be complete. You must count until the day after the seventh week, 50 days. Then you shall bring an offering of new grain to God. So when we had the temple in Jerusalem, our ancestors were able to bring grain on this second night of Passover. They would bring a bundle of barley. It was a way of praying for the crops, of keeping dangerous winds away. And it was a way of counting up to Shavuot, which also began the wheat harvest. And once the temple was destroyed and was not rebuilt, you might wonder what we do with this holiday. We're still commanded in the book of Leviticus to count these days, but what is the purpose of counting these days? So the Kabbalists who I was talking about earlier when we were singing Lecha Dodi, they saw a connection between the Hebrew word for counting and sphira, usfartem lachem, and you shall count them, and the word sphira, which was a divine attribute that I mentioned earlier. And this idea of sphirot as mystical elements begins in Sefer Yetzirah, which is known as the Book of Creation and was written in Palestine in the 3rd and 6th centuries. And they saw this connection as a way to bring meaning to a holiday without the temple and without agriculture, and to connect each of these weeks with an aspect of divinity. And so last year I took on a project, a writing project, to write every day, thinking about these sphirot. I was deeply engaged in it and trying to understand it for myself. And I want to just take a moment to explain the sphirot and how they show up before I get into explaining how they add to my understanding of divinity. So what you see on your screen right now is the tree of life. It is an image of these 10 sphirot, and at the highest level are Keter, Bina, and Chokhmah. They are known as the crown of God, understanding, and wisdom. These are beyond human understanding for 99.9% of us, and they don't factor into the counting of the Omer. But the 7 lower sphirot are accessible for us, and we have ways of relating to them and understanding them. And so each of these is attached to a day of the week, and each of these is attached to a week itself. We are in the first week right now, and that is the week of Chesed. And it may be very small on your screen right now. It might be hard to read this, but you see attached to each of these words, each of these sphirot, a series of words, which are associations. And there is a cluster of associations for each sphirot. And so for the week of Chesed, which is often translated as loving kindness or generosity, it is associated with the right arm, with the color white, with the idea of grace. It's also associated with our ancestor Abraham, who is known to be especially generous. And each of these 7 sphirot have this cluster of associations. So the first week is Chesed, loving kindness. The second is Gevura, or might. The third is Tiferet, beauty or compassion. The fourth is Netzach, which is eternity or victory. And the fifth is Hod, splendor or gratitude. Yesod is the sixth, that's foundation. And the seventh is Shechina or Malchut. This is the divine presence as it rests in Israel. And this image is one way of depicting these 10 divine emanations, but I don't think we should understand it as so rigid. It's just a way of expressing a deeper truth. And so as we go through counting, you see this beautiful image of the 7x7 diagram. Each week has a color that's associated with that sefirot, and each day has a color. And so we won't go into it deeply, but you can just have a sense of how they go together, so that each day during the week of Chesed, it interacts with each of the other sefirot. The second day is Gevura, that's blue. The third day is Tiferet, it's green. So here on day 3, Chesed, loving kindness, and Tiferet, beauty or harmony, are in relationship with each other. And that relationship between divine qualities appears on every single day, including the days when that sefirot is in relationship with itself. So I realize this is complex. It took me many years of rabbinical school to get this far. So I hope you're able to follow along with me, and after services, feel free to ask me any questions and I'll try and explain better. But this, to me, is what was so exciting last year, and you'll pardon my art here. If we just looked at that tree of life, we might think of a sefirah as a circle, as a ball. But I saw each of these associations helping to expand my understanding of what Tiferet is. That if I just translate Tiferet as beauty, that is a limitation. Everything has to fit in a smaller box. But Tiferet is beauty. It is also harmony. It is also truth. It is also all of Jacob and his story and all of those associations. And so by understanding these different clusters, it really expands my understanding of Tiferet and what it means for God's harmony to be present in the world. What does it mean for divine beauty to exist and for me to be in relationship with that? Jacob wasn't always somebody who acted so harmoniously, but those things exist together within Tiferet. And so when we think about each of these sefirot and all of the clusters around them, and we remember that they are each connected to every other of the lower sefirah, including ourselves, we can imagine an almost endless number of lines connecting these aspects of God to each other, and also within ourselves, because we are reflections of God. We are created in the image of God, and we embody each of these attributes. And what we are trying to do during the Omer, for those who take on this spiritual practice, is to reflect on how these attributes emerge in our life, to use it as a way of spiritual refinement or of personal growth, or just of reflecting in some way about what is going on in the world. And last year, Passover and the Omer arrived just as the pandemic was starting. And I had had this idea for many, many years to connect basketball, the sport I love, with the Omer, this time that I love. And so a few friends and I started a website, Omer Time, www.omertime.com. And for 49 days, I wrote reflections on basketball players who represented the combination of divine attributes that were present on that day. So for example, after sunset tonight, we will be in day 5+1 of the Omer. It's a superstition that you don't say the actual number, you don't count it until the actual time. And while I am very liberal on a number of religious fronts, I am actually quite strict about when I count the Omer. And so I don't count the Omer until after it is dark. Day 6, for example, last year was the combination of Yesod and Chesed, of foundation and loving kindness. And I would express that by saying, within love, there is righteousness. And so I thought about all the basketball players who wore the number 6, and Bill Russell to me was the perfect encapsulation of that. He was a tzaddik in so many ways. And day 6 of the Omer and the attribute of Yesod is associated with Joseph, who the rabbi saw as a tzaddik. And so I took the time to reflect and think and to write about it. And by devoting myself to this practice and reflecting on it, I came to a number of understandings which have been very helpful for me as I think about the nature of God and the nature of divinity. And my takeaways is that while God is one, God is not one-dimensional. I think one of our dangers in life is that if we see God as one, that means that God is either with us or against us. God is on my side. God believes what I believe. And of course, these are just projections and these are false. But that is the danger for so many of us, is seeing God as one-dimensional. And by going through this process of counting the Omer and reflecting on the Sfirot, I had a much deeper understanding of how multidimensional God is, of all of the context and the ways that God is present in the world and in myself. It also helped me understand that God is found in relationship, that the relationship between these two aspects of the divine presence of two different Sfirot was not so simple. It could not be boiled down to one word, and that it was in that relationship between those two things and understanding it that I was able to find a deeper understanding of God. And finally, for me, to understand that God is not static, that God is in process, and that God is in the flow of the universe. I think sometimes when we think of God as one, for me, it's a stationary association. But God is not static. God is very much in the flow. And these Sfirot are present in the world, and they are present in all of us, and they show up in so many different ways. So I hope that this little glimmer into what the Kabbalistic system of counting the Omer is about might inspire you to deeper study and to take on this practice. You can go find the newsletter. You can find Rabbi Berkman and Jessica's reflections for a deeper understanding. And finally, I want you to know that counting the Omer, you don't have to take on the Kabbalistic system at all. In fact, for many years, I kind of rejected it. It was too complex, it was too confusing, and I wanted a much simpler way of understanding it. And the mitzvah is simply to count, is to take a couple minutes out of your night to say a short blessing and to count the day. And if you find meaning in that Kabbalistic system, then that's great. And if you don't, then it's not actually a core part of the ritual. So I appreciate you listening and letting me share something that is both like personal and important to me. And after services, I'm happy to stick around and to answer any questions. We're going to move to the conclusion tonight of our service with Aleinu, and I invite everybody to rise and body or spirit.
Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסד הארץ, ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינת עוזו בפגועי מרומים, הוא אלוהינו אין עוד, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא ביום
Before we say more Kaddish tonight, before we say Mourner's Kaddish tonight, I just want to give people an opportunity to type into the chat the names of their loved ones that they're saying Kaddish for, and to make a few announcements about what is coming up for us at TOS in the next week. Tomorrow morning, we are going to have a special Passover service with Torah reading, with the opportunity to sing Hallel, and that includes Yizkor services, and that'll be led by Rabbi Berkman and myself, and it starts early at 10 a.m. We hope you'll be able to join us on Zoom. Next Wednesday is Yom HaShoah, and we have a special program with Professor Fred Lazin, who is going to join us at 7 o'clock to talk about the Jews of Shanghai and their experience during the Holocaust, and it'll begin with a short service led by Rabbi Berkman. And then next Friday, we have a special guest speaker, Natasha Goldman, who is going to speak about Holocaust memorials. And that'll be at the conclusion of Shabbat services, the same link and time as normal. And on Friday, April 16th, we are going to celebrate Yom HaAtzmaut, Israeli Independence Day. So stay tuned for more announcements about that. And finally, our Social Action Committee has launched an amazing way to help people feel connected and to see the work that our community is doing to change the world. And I encourage you to go on the website under Social Action and to find the Social Action Tracker. There are 18 ways that you can make a difference, either by reading a book or watching a movie or donating or taking action. And they are just suggestions. And if you find meaning in them, we would love for you to do them and to check off that you've done them so that we can see the impact that we are having as a larger community. Tonight, we turn to Mourner's Kaddish, which can be found on page 294. And we include the names of Luz Maria Salamanca, Neil Spritz, Jean Remier Ladragan, Norma Weber, Bill Linkow, and Peter Feldman. If it is your custom, please rise for Mourner's Kaddish. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, v'yama divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'chaye techol beit Yisrael, b'agala u'v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevarach leolam ulamei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, Vitadar, Vitale, Vitalal, Shmeid Kudsha, Berechu, Le'ela, Min Kol Berchata V'Shirata, Tushbechata V'Nechamata, Damiran V'Alma V'Imru, Amen. Yehe Shlama Rabba Min Shemaya, V'Chaim Alinu V'Al Kol Yisrael, V'Imru, Amen. Oseh Shalom V'Mramav, Hu Ya'aseh Shalom, Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Zichronam livracha. May their memories be a blessing. Tonight we have the opportunity to say Kiddush together and to do motzi. If you have some wine or grape juice and some matzah, I invite you to join us. The blessings to sanctify Shabbat over the wine or grape juice can be found on page 5. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho b'ahavad uvratzon hinchilanu zikaron lema'aseh v'reishit ki hu yom techila lemikraye kodesh zecher letziat mitzrayim ki vanu v'acharta ve'otanu kidashta mikol hamim ve'shabbat kodshecha ve'ahavad uvratzon Hinchaltanu Baruch Ata Adonai Mekadesh HaShabbat. And if you still have some more appetite for matzah, please join me. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Hamotzi Lechem Min Haaretz. So Josh, I'm sure after hearing me sing that Passover song, you're so inspired to close with it. But what are we going to close with tonight?
I thought we'd just round it out with another Hine Matov. I love sandwiching things. Hallelujah. And eating sandwiches, as you know. Hallelujah, 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 amen. Hallelujah, 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 amen. Sing it out, Hine, matov manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine matov manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Dai dainu, dai dainu, dai dainu, dainu, dainu. Shevet achim, shevet achim gam yachad, shevet achim gam yachad.
Thank you. Shabbat Shalom. Welcome. Josh, there's an echo when you mute yourself. There we go. Now I don't have to listen to myself. Shabbat Shalom. Thank you all for being here tonight. Please stick around and schmooze for a little bit as we'll shut down the Zoom. And everybody's invited to join us on Zoom for a few more minutes.